checks ready to help the pawn advance if it needs to come to d1, and also preventing a king rush this whole time to help. So just fantastic. And those are the kind of victories, when you talk of Wesley So, that you think he's going to get. It's technical, super precise, and he catches people making blunders in those types of variations like that. That little peek over he had at Maxime, that was classic So. That was a classic Wesley look.
A little peekaboo.
Like, hey, I think I calculated one move deeper in that line than you, buddy. I think I got you.
Well, he definitely has been getting Maxime the early going here. And Maxime, once again, we have a different setup for him in this game because he has put his bishop on g7, 𝙤𝙬𝙬𝙬 it. It's from a Najdorf, but it's looking dragonish. And, well, Danny, what do you make of this? You're a Sicilian player. Do you like this setup for black?
It's a 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬, first of all, right? Not to be confused with Gandalf or any other elven, I don't know. It's a 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬. Ganondorf. But, okay, so the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬, jokes aside, is we'll analyze it real quick, is this combination of dragon development along with the move a6, right? So you start with Najdorf, you switch to the dragon, which is defined by this 𝙤𝙬𝙬𝙬. Bishop on the dark squares in a Sicilian. What do I think about it, Robert? Honest truth, I think it sucks. I mean, I don't think these lines are very good for black. And I think
I played the Dragendorf, Danny. I drew 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 with it many moons ago.
You know what? You're really good, okay?
What are you trying to say about Maxime, huh?
No, okay, come on. No, these guys are great. But I mean, objectively, the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬, is a reason why it's featured as, let's say, surprise weapons. You're not making a regular habit of the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 in your repertoire, Robert, despite your draw versus Kamsky. And
I need to tell you something. Can I tell you something?
What?
Sam Shankland once told me that he thought the Dragendorf was a pretty good opening.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if Shankland says it, it must be true.
That's what I was thinking. When he told me that, I was like, well, in Shankland's prep, I trust.
It's actually, I mean, jokes aside, Sam is one of the best prepared players. Sam is more prepared than his rating even suggests. And that's saying something because he's a 27, 20-plus player. But Sam is, okay, all right, maybe I'll give it another look-see, huh?
Honestly, I don't really like it either, but... You know, just noting that Sam said that to me, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that somebody's complimenting the Dragendorf, and it's not me being facetious. So
yeah, it's interesting. Well, okay. We ended up kind of on a practical debate about it. I'm sure for most of the viewers, they're like, what is this open? What is even the debate about the opening? The basic point is it's a very sharp opening, and what that means is, you know, if you're not well prepared theoretically, you can get shoved around and find yourself regretting your opening choice. That's the kind of opening it is, and very dangerous. But if you get positions like this, let's highlight the pros of what black has established, right? You've got pressure on the c-file, a la every Sicilian's dream. The bishop on the long diagonal with rook's pressure on the dark squares of the queen side is often what you want in every dragon, whether the king is castled over here or not. So if we're evaluating, you know, what happened in this particular 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬, the one thing I'm watching out for is this knight. Don't get it trapped on e5. But assuming Maxime figures this out, you know, overall, this is the kind of position where black has achieved a very double-edged game. He can play for a win. Now, all that said, guess who I still think is a little better here? White.
White.
And the main reason is that the bishop pair, the pawn on d5, this is what we call a Marco hop structure, the transition of a knight trade that happened on this move 14, opens up the e-file long term, and what that means is eventually rook e1 comes, e7 is a backward pawn in these positions. Black is sort of hoping for all these tactics. Like, here's the problem I have with black's position. You ready, Robert?
Yep.
Tell me how to improve any of these pieces. They're on their best squares right now, and white hasn't even been is not close to optimal. Like, you make a trade, you put the rook on e1, I can play f4, eventually kick your knight, e7's weak. I feel like white's position has much more to improve.
Knight d7, knight f6, knight takes d5 will be my next three moves.
Okay, first of all, I'm not going to give you three moves, Robert.
You asked me how to improve the position, I gave you an answer, now you're upset about it.
Okay, knight at d7, I'll play g5 first. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to play h4, I'm going to get my e-file, I'm going to bind you, a la dragon style.
And I'll take your knight on d4 and take your pawn h3, and then you're going to be upset about it.
Okay, first of all, you may have just lost the exchange to knight e2. Oh, you have knight f3 check, you lucky dog. I love how we argue like it's our position.
Did I?
Okay, Wesley has to find something here. I'll give it, you know, again, the critical point is that black has the pieces kind of optimally placed, close to it anyway. And if he can start cashing in, then that's the key. But my point was, if you gave white lots of time, white still had a lot more ways to positionally improve than black did. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it looks like black is actually getting the tension he needs now. So we'll find out. Thank God it's not my game.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. But your 92 move is probably the best. But I agree with you about knight f3 check being the response.
It still wins the exchange.
Exactly. But I think it's not the clearest exchange, and that's what.
By the way, Wesley normally does that kind of lean back and look up when he's skeptical of his opponent's tactics.
You know the Wesley faces
I just
now?
watched him for 10 days in Oslo, Norway. And, like, it's just like a body language thing you pick up, like Hikaru Nakamura's many catalogs of faces.
Yep.
It's kind of like he's not, but he just feels like there's something off. And normally, like, you know, when Magnus like went full tilt in the last game with pushing the A pawn, right before he cashed in and took on B2 with the bishop, you know the game I'm talking about. He kind of did the same thing. I think it's a reminder he does to tell himself to kind of stay calm. I think this is good for me. And now by the way, he goes for 92. We'll see if he can convert.
Yeah, I think you predict this very well. You're reading the body language well. And knight f3 check. King to either C or D1. Probably C1.
I think you got to go to C1 because otherwise rook D5 is check.
And after king C1, rook takes D5, knight takes C3, bishop takes C3. We're in a bit of a messy position because
and it's a typical dragon. Go ahead.
Yeah, black has one pawn and a knight for a rook.
Yep.
And white's pawn A5 is a bit overextended.
Yep.
The pawn H3 might become vulnerable. But you're absolutely correct. It is a traditional dragon sort of approach. Exchange down, but with massive amount of counterplay. What's he thinking about here, by the way?
Well, he's probably confirming those kind of variations. Maxime is...
You might be thinking of rook takes E3, actually. Just decide which minor piece he wants.
But if you take E3 instead, now I take with the F pawn to stop knight F3 check. You're picking up D5. I move my king. I'm not sure where. You don't get the line you talked about with the bishop on C3. So ultimately, he goes for that line. And I think it's because of the final position we're seeing. Everyone, Robert's idea of the bishop on C3 is kind of key. Because it hits A5, black has to keep the pressure on in these dragon exchange stacks. White's considering whether I can play bishop B6 or whether I give up the A pawn, which is, I think, the right practical choice. Because if you can force pieces off the board, the rook's chances of flexing on the orthogonal angles.
I didn't even know what you were trying to say, but that is
orthogonal is a word I recently added to my vocabulary. Orthogonal angles.
Is one of your kids doing geometry in school?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So the rook's chances of flexing, post Malone style, we want to get into whatever pre-Malone was or current Malone, but post Malone flex would be the rook on open lines, files. Those are the orthogonal angles the rook wants to dominate.
Oh man, if I hear one more math word from you, I'm quitting for the day. I didn't sign up for a little geometry lesson here.
Hey, you're welcome.
I'll appreciate it later when it.
Okay, but here come the angles. They're opening up.
Well, here comes the bishop sitting on D6 like a nice blockading piece, and I like the 2 extra pawns that black has. Yep. I'm taking black here.
Okay.
I think you like the material though.
I don't know. I mean. By the way, I've been sort of touting White's storyline, White's perspective in this game, and for good reason. I think that with correct prep and approach, White is better. But I've probably played these positions more as black if we're actually talking about personal experience. So, I think 2 pawns for the exchange is something. But what ends up happening, the reason I applauded the idea of giving up that second pawn for the open lines is often you should prefer the right opening lines for your pieces over small amounts of material. And I don't know. I feel like White's not going to lose this game. Okay, maybe black holds, but I don't think White is going to be worse.
I agree. I think that White should be the only one with serious winning chances unless something goes very wrong. You can put your rook on D3 to protect the B3 pawn. You can just sit on the position, and there's no way for black to team up and make progress on the pieces. Now, F6. I guess he's trying to go king F7 and then maybe king E6, but that feels... Yeah. I just look at the light squares
I know,
and the fact that you have a dark square bishop. And
I gave you that look. I gave you the so look. I was like...
You're like, please don't infiltrate. Don't do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this...
Here comes H4. Again, more orthogonal angles opening up.
But what if I take on H4 actually? Like if I just take on
if
H4,
take H4, Rook H1, Bishop G3, I have Bishop F4 in the end.
Bishop F4. I see the pawn on G5. I think you can't put a bishop on F4, but of course my pawn's on H4 now. But
okay, but now he'll trade and he'll use the H file to get in on the action.
Yeah, just there it goes. Bishop D4. So he's threatening bishop takes F6.
Oh, that was a nice trick. Let me show it real quick. Analysis board we go. Bishop D4 was threatening things like bishop takes F6 and lights out. And so that forces king F7. Oh, whoa!